it was a super difficult time because I was lost. I had quit my job, sold my car, rented my flat out because I was going to start a new life. I guess I was going through a bit of a crisis at the time where I was desperate to meet somebody and I was going out a lot. It was a difficult time.
From the heart of Holborn to the helm of Synergy Immigration Solutions, Laura Notaro is reshaping how stories begin. This is the voice behind real change.
You need to find what's really important to you, I guess. The important things to me is have a bit of green space. There's a huge park. I like my yoga studio. I like the gym. I like being part of a community. So Crystal Palace works really well for me.
That one decision and that one approval changes generations. Like it's just crazy to think, that one decision you make and that one approval that you get, like how much of an impact it has. Both our journeys started together because my journey in the UK also started about 5 years ago and your journey also started there. So, and everything happens for a reason. Now we're sitting on the pod together.
When Synergy first started, and then when we became a little bit more established, we started to spend money on marketing. And the first client that we ever got was
Laura, what do you think is the biggest challenge these days for people trying to migrate or move to the UK?
big question. It's probably navigating the immigration rules. They're just changing so frequently. There's been some significant changes in the last couple of years. Predominantly, we focus on corporate immigration, and they've raised the salary levels for skilled workers to come to the UK. It's close to £40,000. So it's really difficult for migrants that aren't in a very kind of senior specialist role to immigrate to the UK. They need to have a job. It needs to be a skilled job. And aside from that, the immigration fees are super high now. They're constantly increasing year on year. And they're just tightening the requirements all the time. So I'd say navigating the immigration rules is probably the most difficult thing.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a lot more questions around that, by the way, because this is obviously the pod is around immigrants building companies in the UK, but there are a lot of people who constantly send me DMs on LinkedIn, and just in general, like you rightly said, the laws keep on changing, and just trying to understand the different paths or routes where, particularly founders, if they want to start a company, how do they move to the UK? Is there just a one path or multiple different paths? So lots more on that.
Okay.
It'll be interesting for me to know as well for myself as well, because from the time I came here, so it's been roughly about 5 years, I came on an innovator visa.
Yeah.
Lots has changed since then as well, I know. But it'll be interesting just for my knowledge, but hopefully it helps a lot of people who are listening to this pod. However, before we start, where did your journey start in the UK? So did your parents move here or your grandparents? If you can just walk me through that early stages of your family's life.
Sure. So I'm half Italian. I'm a quarter British and a quarter Irish. I'm a mongrel. But my father's parents, they came from Naples. They immigrated to the UK in the 1940s. They had my father, my uncle and my aunt in the UK. So I'm second generation. They settled in Holborn, which is a predominantly Italian community. So I grew up there. I was born there. Pretty much all of my friends and family are still living in Holborn. That's it really.
I'm just trying to understand from you, because I speak to a lot of first generation immigrants, second generation. You're perhaps maybe the second generation immigrant, or maybe, I'm not too sure if I've spoken to others, but it's just interesting for me how generation after generation, things also change within the family or within the individual who is experiencing a different environment. So I mean, for me, obviously, my experience is different from your experience because I came to the country 5 years ago versus you. Obviously, you were born and raised here, but then
Yeah.
not just you, but your parents as well. So, would you say there was something out of the ordinary for you when you were growing up, or you never thought about it?
Um, I guess I was very, my parents split when I was younger. I was 12 when my parents split. Um, but when they were together, I grew up in a very kind of Italian community. We had Italian parties. We went to Italian, like the street festivals. Ate all the food, was surrounded by family, like really very Italian upbringing per se. So that was just the norm. That just was always the norm for me. Yeah, I wouldn't say it was like anything out of the ordinary, really.
So you think it's safe to say that most second generation children don't really feel any difference or indifference when they're living not just London. I mean, your context would be London, but uh, so you think it would be similar for other communities as well, but or maybe it's a little bit different for you because your parents split, and I'm guessing then you stayed with on your mom's
Mum,
side,
yeah,
which was obviously the British side,
yeah,
and then maybe that also had an impact.
yeah,
Yeah, because I'm just trying to understand what if you stayed on the Italian side?
yeah,
Would that then impact your upbringing and the way you
yeah.
see things today?
Sad to say that my dad, he was a bit nervous about speaking Italian, which is bizarre. So his parents didn't speak Italian, like were kind of, I guess they were kind of integrating into the community, focusing on their English. So when they had their children, they spoke in Italian, but he didn't ever teach me Italian. We didn't converse in Italian. I can swear in Italian. I won't go there. I could even chant football songs in Italian, but that's about it. It's pretty sad, really. And then I guess because my parents split when I was 12, I still had a relationship with my dad, but it was a bit kind of fragmented. But it wasn't until later in life that I went to the pub with him at the age of 18, and that's when our relationship we grew really kind of tight, and we grew a lot closer. So predominantly grew up with my mum, single parent. It was just my mum and I. So we stopped going to the Italian parties and stuff like that. It wasn't, it's sad really that it came to that. But, it's always just been me and my mum, and that's been a beautiful thing too.
It's really interesting for me to understand this because obviously like I mentioned, obviously my upbringing is different from yours, but also because you grew up on your mom's side and you didn't have any racial disconnect, technically speaking, because you sounded the part, but you also looked the part. So obviously that maybe did not have any impact on you growing up, because I've spoken to a lot of people who perhaps had a similar background to you, but then if they looked a little bit different, if they were from a South Asian background, for instance, then there was still an impact. So I'm guessing that was not the case for you.
No, it wasn't the case. I mean, I suppose my nan, my nonna, taught my mum all the how to cook, pretty much.
Okay.
So aside from that, my mum always used to try and influence, I guess, pasta vazul, for example. That was every time I got sick, she'd make me pasta vazul. And so she wanted to kind of keep me connected with my Italian roots in that sense. But ultimately, like, I'm really proud of being half Italian. I love it. I love the fact that I am. But also, I just love being a Londoner. I'm London born and bred. I grew up in Holborn, central London. Like, that is, essentially that's who I am. And, I guess being half Italian is just, it is part of that, but it's not, essential to who I am.
And London is such a beautiful city. Like, it's such a big melting pot. Like, so I was raised in Dubai, lived in Dubai all my life. Obviously, Dubai is pretty similar to London because you've got people from all over the
Yeah.
world. And I think London is so beautiful. I think just on a on a bigger multiplier than Dubai, in my opinion, because also I think, what makes a city really beautiful is its people, and the diversity here is just magic. I mean, and you've got people from all over the world, ethnic backgrounds, religion, so on and so forth. So I think the diversity is just so rich, and you're so right. I just felt, although I moved here only 5 years ago, I felt home, Laura, from the time I walked into the city. But it's the Londoners which made me feel home.
Yeah.
It's just magic. And even, it was interesting when I first came here. Every now and again, I used to think, oh shit, I sometimes don't even hear the British accent. So I'm just like, the accents keep changing,
Yeah.
and then the people keep changing
Yeah.
as you keep on, moving about in the city. I think it's just magic.
Yeah.
So I do agree that, I mean, even for me, although I've just come here just a few years ago, I just feel so much of a Londoner than anything else.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love
It's
that.
amazing.
I love
It's amazing.
I never, like, literally, because I grew up in Holborn, but I bought a place in Crystal Palace, well, close to Crystal Palace, Annerley, in 2005. So I moved south. But I mean, I might as well been emigrating to the States. Because it's unheard of. Usually North Londoners move to the north or Bedfordshire, or, they rarely go south of the river. But I feel, even though I'm from Holborn and people ask me, where are you from? I always say I'm from Holborn. But I mean, like, Crystal Palace to me now is like, I'm so passionate about it's a little triangle, and my life revolves around this little triangle. And there's a real sense of community there, and everyone's super welcoming. And I like, pretty much spend my whole wages in Crystal Palace, like, but it's amazing. And then like, if I've got stuff in town, I was driving across Tower Bridge a couple of weeks ago, and I still get goosebumps
Oh, wow.
when I hit London City, and I'm like, crossing one of the bridges. Even last night, I crossed at the Albert Bridge, and I just get such a sense of pride, and I just love it. I'm absolutely crazy about the city. I don't think I'll ever fall out of love with London town.
Oh my God, that's so beautiful to hear,
Yeah.
because every now and again I think and I wish, oh my God, I wish I was born here, because this place is just so magical. But then I also remind myself, oh no, it's good that I was not born here, because now I'm able to appreciate, things around me so much more. Perhaps maybe even more than people who were born here, because I would just think, logically, the novelty wears off.
Yeah.
If you were just born into something, you just don't appreciate the way perhaps I would. But that's really nice to hear, because you were obviously born here, and if you still feel that, I think then it also, revalidates the magic of the city.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's just so beautiful.
Absolutely. Like, I love being a tourist as well in London, because but it's ever evolving.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
even when I go to Holborn, it was a bit of a shithole. But it was kind of quite a rundown place. It's always been like the hub for all the law firms. I grew up on Theobald's Road. But I come from a council estate there. But that's why there's such a tight-knit community in London, because we were all on the estate. We were all playing out. We didn't have phones back then. That makes me sound old. But we didn't,
We're the same page.
yeah. But we didn't have phones. So that's it. We used to knock on each other's door and say, coming out to play. I mean, proper old school. But that's why I have such a sense of community, because, we kind of just grew up in this little bubble, really. But it's evolved so much. Like, it's completely gentrified. It's like an entirely different place. And every time I go back to Holborn, I've always got that sense of pride, but I get a bit lost. Because everything just looks so different to how it looked as a child, growing up. I mean, I was probably like early 20s, 23, I think, when I moved from there. And now I pretty much spend my life in South London. So when I go back to North London, I feel like a bit of a tourist. I'm not going to lie.
It's also interesting, the business that you're in now, because we're talking about how great London is. I think now it's been about 15 minutes that we're still we're in the pod, and you and I cannot stop talking about London. But it's also amazing because I'm a big advert for London tourism. I'm like, oh my God, please, if you haven't visited the city, please, you have to. And I mean, my agenda is slightly different as well. I want people to come here, create businesses, and so on. I think it's just amazing. It's an amazing incubator for businesses to also, not just to start but to thrive. So yeah, I'm a big advocate of the city, and obviously it's interesting the space that you're in. I mean, technically, you're also inviting people to the city, and you're helping them navigate life and get a better life. But walk me through, what led you into this? What was Laura doing before this?
I've always worked in sales. So I started working in recruitment, actually. So I used to work in travel recruitment, funny enough. When you used to have to go into the high street and book a holiday, we didn't have an online platform where you could book flights. So we used to do recruitment, placing, and then a job offer. I went traveling. That's right. I went traveling, and so I'd quit my job. I'd worked in recruitment for a couple of years, and I came back from traveling around Australia and Thailand and had the time of my life. And I was kind of at a stage where I was like, well, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I just want to go traveling or bum around the world for the rest of my life. And my mum threw like a Girl About Town newspaper on the bed and said, I've circled a job advert that says it's an immigration company, but they're looking for somebody with a recruitment background.
Ah.
And so my mum essentially navigated my path.
Wow.
And said, get off your ass and give them a call. And but it was so strange because the guy that I spoke to, that was the recruiter that was looking to place somebody in this position, turned out to be a Notaro. What are the chances?
Oh, wow.
He was like my third cousin,
No
separate.
way.
But yeah, it was so funny because then he'd called me up and said, you're a Notaro, I'm a Notaro. This was meant to be. And I got offered the job on this first day. I started at a company. Can I say the name? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, Dearson Wynyard. And they were looking for somebody who had a bit of kind of sales flair, I guess. Not your average, I've passed a law degree and I'm coming in and I want to do immigration and, but they wanted somebody with a bit of sales flair. And yeah, I mean, that kind of started me on the path. I was with them for 5 years. Yeah, interesting. I kind of fell into it.
But was starting a business something that you always wanted to do, or?
Always.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Always.
How come?
But because I just find it really difficult to work for other people.
You're unemployable, in other words. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I just I guess I always would just like to have been my own boss, but I wasn't ready until I was ready. I mean, I did, even though I started in immigration, I went from immigration, I worked at Ernst & Young for a 6-month period.
Oh, did you?
That was hell.
Oh,
Oh my goodness. I kind of thrive in smaller, I'm like a big fish in a small pond, not the other way around. But it was a really good learning experience for
I was
me.
going to say, because, I mean, you're saying hell, because why? Because it was pressure, a lot of work, whatever.
Processes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm thinking running a business is also not easy. It's very difficult. So it's not because of that, it was hell.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's really funny because we've got so many processes in place these days that I probably slip into the job, at the age of 49 quite easily now. But back then, I think, it just wasn't the right environment for me. It was really high pressured. I kind of was thrown into the deep end. And I definitely didn't swim. I definitely, I definitely sunk with that one. But, it was a really good learning experience. But off the back of that, I was offered an opportunity with a couple of recruiters that were looking to start an immigration company. So they were looking for a manager. And aside from that, they literally had created a website, had no immigration experience, but wanted an expert to come in, start the business, do the casework, but essentially register the business with back then they were called the OISC, to get the license to practice immigration and then get the business started. But, so that gave me the core experience that I needed to set up Synergy. And I did that for them, but I was an employee and, was a manager within that business. And I did that for 5 years. So it gave me real experience of managing staff. But for me, it didn't feel authentic because it wasn't my business. It felt like my business. They didn't really have any immigration experience, so I was kind of just thrown in the deep end there as well. But it gave me the confidence later down the line to start Synergy, because I was like, well, I've done it once before. Let's go for it, yeah.
But was it let's go for it because you were also fed up and burnt out because of this? Because Ernst & Young, you left because the environment was not the right environment for you. Was the case again now here, thinking, okay, it's not the right environment for me, and now it's the right time to start the business? Or was it, oh my God, I have to start a business. If I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. Why did you start the business at that time? Why didn't you wait longer, or why didn't you start before? Why didn't you start a business after Ernst & Young?
Yeah. I just wasn't ready. I wasn't in that mindset either. So I didn't actually start the business after that business either.
Okay.
I went on a bit of a tangent.
Okay, did you? Okay.
I actually went back into, I actually, after that, I went traveling. I taught English as a foreign language. Well, I learned to teach English as a foreign language. But I never actually started the job because I met my wife.
Oh, wow.
And then we fell madly in love over the 10-day period before I was due to go traveling.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And I bummed around for two months. It's what I do best. And then I didn't start the job because I'd already found my soulmate. So I went back to the UK. And I was like a lot, it was a super difficult time because I was lost. I had quit my job, sold my car, rented my flat out because I was going to start a new life. I guess I was going through a bit of a crisis at the time where I was desperate to meet somebody, and I was going out a lot, and I was just wanting, it was a difficult time. And then typically I met Lorraine 10 days before I went traveling, and then I decided to come back. So at the time coming back, she supported me, and I was at that point where I was like, okay, now I'm like, what's next for me? I pretty much moved in with her straight away. And then I did like heaps of stuff. I worked in an estate agency, actually selling houses for 2 years. And then off the back of that, I found a job which was around the corner from me. And it was with a company that were looking to recruit investors from overseas into their recruitment business. So it kind of tied together my immigration experience because I needed to understand like the investor immigration rules. I needed to be persuasive. I understood the recruitment business, and so it came along at the right time. And that wasn't really the right opportunity for me either, but it did reignite my passion for immigration. And at that time, I met my then business partner, who said that he's a really well-connected guy. He's a British Indian. He moved over here, I think 15 years ago. And he said, he had an IT business at the time, where he still does actually. And he said, I need help with the immigration side of things, and also like HR, getting people settled into the business, moving them over, getting them settled into projects in the UK. And so I started kind of working with him. I left this other company, the recruitment business, started working with him. And I guess because at that point, I didn't have anything to lose.
Right.
I was like, well, if I can't give immigration advice without being, registered with the OISC. And I didn't have anything to lose, because I'd lost it all because I'd gone, traveling and everything else. So I've always been quite an impulsive kind of person. I think most most entrepreneurs are impulsive. Like,
Naive.
yeah,
And naive.
exactly. You're like, okay, like
It's
I'm
easy.
going to back
Yeah.
myself here.
Yeah.
Like, if this doesn't work, what's the worst that can happen? I'm kind of unemployed, so let's go for it. So I went back. I'd been out of immigration at this point about 10 years.
Wow.
So, it'd been like a big period of time. So I went back and took the exams, failed the first one.
Uh-huh.
Oh my goodness. And then I passed the second. We got our license. And then we kind of, for 6 months, we were working together. But Synergy at that time, we were doing IT and we were doing immigration. And both businesses started to do really well. And then it was almost like, well, I kind of can't go in this direction and go, we need to be specialists in our own fields, right? So, and that's when Synergy Immigration Solutions was born. That was July 2020. And that was literally during lockdown. So, your life changed in lockdown and so did mine significantly. Yeah.
Wow. Wow, that's been a hell of a journey, by the way.
Yeah.
Also interesting how you went out, came back, met your partner. I'm just thinking, oh shit, what if you didn't meet your partner? Maybe you wouldn't come back in 10 days.
Yeah.
Maybe you'd stay longer. And maybe, like all the decisions we take in life I mean, it just drastically impacts the outcome that we have, It's crazy. But yeah, congratulations on meeting your now wife. I know you've spoken about her on your social media as well, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Just a few things, it's interesting, your entire journey up until now. I'm just trying to think. So you obviously had the experience, but was it the experience only that led you to move into this business, or was there? I mean, you said, was there passion involved? Was there? I don't know. And if yes, why the immigration space?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been passionate about working with people. And, I guess with recruitment, helping people find jobs and finding a job for somebody that they really want is like, it's a life-changing event for somebody else. And the joy that you can get from helping somebody to change their lives,
Yeah.
being, I guess that was what was so significant about moving from recruitment into immigration, because it's even more of an impact. Because, what comes with it is somebody actually like moving to the UK the whole upheaval, bringing their family to the UK, getting them settled in the UK, being able to give people that reassurance. It is the best part of the job when somebody's visa's been approved and you give somebody that news that, that even like the partner spousal visas or partner visas, unmarried partner visas, they're the best visas to deal with, because you really get behind the story of that migrant's journey, how they met their partner. Sometimes it's adverse, they haven't got the support from their family, or that a lot of people that I've worked with might have met during COVID. They couldn't, they met online. They haven't even met in person for the first time. And, you really get to know, you build up a relationship with your clients when you're talking about it. And it's always like in the space of sort of a month, 2 months, where you're kind of working with them, gathering the documents and everything towards submitting their application, that you really begin to build up that rapport, and sometimes even love, I met my wife through a client.
No way.
So the first time I ever spoke to him, he was like, "Oh my God, you really sound like my friend Lorraine." And he was marrying his then partner. They're divorced now. That's another story. But he met his then boyfriend and wanted to get married to him. And I processed their spousal visa. I was invited to the wedding even.
Wow.
Because I built up such a rapport with this guy.
Wow.
And he just kept talking about Lorraine the whole time. And you know, the rest is history. I met her and that was it, you know. Yeah, but it goes to show, doesn't it? Like the relationships that you develop, I guess, with your clients, and it makes it, you know, it's really personal. Somebody's talking about their life, you know, their aspirations, you know, and sometimes I feel like a counselor, you know, because people come to you and they're like, they're nervous about the application. You have to give constant reassurance, you know, and you need to make it right. Like their whole life is dependent on the success of their application. Like, you know, and you feel like it, if it goes wrong, it's your fault. You know? It's a lot of responsibility, you know, but that makes it all worth it when the license is approved. And being able to help our clients to do that, that's what I'm passionate about, you know, and that's what my team are passionate about as well.
I can relate so much to everything that you've said. I mean, when I got my visa approved, because I was so before I actually moved, I was back and forth. So I was still a resident in Dubai and then trying to set up a business here, and I was coming back and forth on a visit visa for about. I did that for about a year. No, sorry, just over a year. Just coming back and forth every 3 months, 4 months. It was proper hectic. And then finally, when I applied for my innovative visa, and when I actually got the visa, I can't tell you, Laura, that was perhaps the best year of my life. It was just the best year of my life because I knew that this is the start of my new life. Like now, my life is going to change. Like, you know, and you spoke about entrepreneurship, and you know, I think that was. I just knew in the bottom of my heart, like, I mean, things are just going to drastically change, not just for me, but my entire family. And off the back of that, you know, obviously we met and we've been doing business with you and taking your services since the last couple of years as well. It's also interesting, which I just found out today, that both our journeys started together because my journey in the UK also started about 5 years ago and your journey also started there. So, and everything happens for a reason. Now we're sitting on the pod together. But also on the front where, you know, I can't tell you. So that was perhaps the happiest moment of my life. But also, I know how it's impacted my life and my family's life, and how it's going to now change generations.
Yeah.
Like you know, that one decision and that one approval changes generations. Like it's just crazy to think, you know, that one decision you make and that one approval that you get, like how much of an impact it has. So a lot of people who obviously have not gone through this process perhaps don't understand that, you know, people also migrate for a better future, for a better life. I mean, it's so much bigger than just that one paycheck.
Yeah.
And it's also a lot of risk. It's also a lot of risk. So, you know, the last thing you want is anything to go wrong. So, you know, having an expert, and you guys have been very kind, your entire team has been very kind to us. And, you know, we've obviously done a lot of work with you and hopefully continue to do a lot of work with you. So first of all, I just want to take this moment also to say thank you. To you, to your team, because you have been a huge catalyst. You and your entire team has been a huge catalyst in my life, and a lot of people who have used your services. So no, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, it's been a journey, right? When Synergy first started, a lot of our business was referrals, and then when we became a little bit more established, we started to spend money on marketing. And, you know, the first client that we ever got was Plumm.
No,
the first client that we secured was Plumm. She called, I know, can you believe that?
It's not for circle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I spoke to your sister, Nadia, and we hit it off. And we spoke for about an hour, and she was telling me about your business. And obviously, you know, the beautiful thing about your business is the situation where you grew your business in Dubai and then brought it to the UK and were able to bring your family here. It's is a fantastic story that you have yourself. But yeah, we both started our business here in the UK in COVID, and you were our first client.
Oh, wow.
Which is amazing. Yeah, that we've got through marketing.
Oh, wow.
So yeah,
Thank God for that marketing effort, Laura. I'm glad you did that. I'm glad you did that.
I know, right? And I guess the beauty from our perspective, and I love dealing with individual applicants as well. The spousal visas, as I say, has always been like my favorite visa category. On the corporate side, we also deal with a lot of small, kind of small to medium-sized businesses, and starting off, a lot of the time it could be a one-man band. They approach us and say, look, we need a license. We want to sponsor migrant workers. A lot of family-run businesses as well are often finding difficulty to sponsor family members and be able to demonstrate to the Home Office, this is genuine. A lot aren't genuine. There's a lot that are disingenuous, let's put it that way. But it's difficult. It's really difficult these days because of the genuineness requirement. But the beautiful thing about working in corporate immigration is watching businesses like Plumm grow. And we almost feel like we're part of the HR team. Because, you can't make a move if you want to sponsor a migrant workers without us, And so that's something else that we're really passionate about, working with these clients, building rapport with these clients over, the last 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely are. You and the entire team are like an extended arm of our HR team.
Yeah.
I mean, like you rightly said, there's a lot of things that we absolutely need you guys to help us and assist us with. So we spoke about how people do business with people.
Yeah.
People don't do business with companies, and I think it's just you and your team has just been so beautiful to us. So anybody listening, I highly recommend Laura and her team. But on that note, Laura, let's just dig a little bit deeper on the whole. I mean, I started off with this question, the whole immigration landscape in the UK. Like I said, I get this asked a lot. I've come here, but I mean, I'm out of this equation now for the longest time because I applied and then I did my ILR and then now I'm applying for my citizenship and all that. So obviously things have changed since over the years. So someone, just from a business context, let's just understand that context first. From a business context, I want to start a company in the UK. What are my options?
So it all depends on your background and your skill set, essentially. I think the government have made it so difficult over the last, they've removed the investor visa, they tightened requirements on the innovator founder visa, that's changed significantly. They've just made it really difficult. And then you've got the endorsing body, you have to have the business plan really super watertight. So that, I guess like the options are quite limited now. A lot of people are turning to self-sponsorship. It isn't an actual visa, but a lot of people are turning to say what it is effectively it works best if you've got a company that's overseas that wants to then create a business in the UK. To start a business in the UK, apply for a license for that UK business, and then apply to sponsor yourself through that license.
Okay.
A lot of people are turning to that, but the government have also cottoned on to that, made it, and they're kind of tightening the requirements around that as well. They're calling it personal capacity. If you want to then try and sponsor somebody who's a family member, or technically if you're the director of a business to sponsor yourself. It's absolutely doable, but they are making it more and more difficult. That's an option. And then you've got the innovator founder visa, the global talent. But again, you have to be really highly skilled and talented in your industry to be able to meet the requirements. It's tough. It's really tough now.
Yeah, because I remember when I applied, there were roughly about 13 or 15 endorsing bodies. And now they're down to like 2 or 3, if I'm not mistaken. Like it's really shrunk. I mean, that aspect is shrunk. I mean, I don't know if you know, but is there a particular reason why they've also reduced the number of endorsing bodies? Or
I'm not sure. I guess just to monitor it, or just to
Okay.
keep it more confined.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's really like you're one in a million.
Yeah, I know.
You know that, right? The fact that you're coming to your ILR now as well,
Citizenship. ILR was
Yeah. Yep.
last year. Yeah.
Of course, of course. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. We're getting less inquiries these days for the Innovator Founder Visa. And even when we start talking to people about the requirements, people are scared. It's such a commitment. The requirements are so heavy, particularly when it comes to ILR. People just want to go down an easier route.
Right.
And self-sponsorship, it gives them the option to apply for a 5-year visa.
Got it.
There isn't an endorsing body in place. So, essentially they could apply for a 5-year visa and may never get questioned about it from the Home Office unless the business receives an audit, which is very likely to happen under self-sponsorship.
Right.
But yeah, all of the kind of entrepreneur routes are really difficult these days.
So from a self-sponsorship perspective, so you establish a company here, now you're self-sponsored, and then you're running, so you can run that business. Obviously, you're running that business here.
Yeah.
And then I'm guessing you're also, from an income perspective, let's say if this business is doing well, not doing well, can you also maybe have a side income? Maybe can you get a job as well, or you can only work in this business?
So you can do supplementary employment because it comes under the skilled worker category.
Got it.
So you'd need to meet the minimum requirements for the salary, which is 38,700 as a skilled worker migrant, or the minimum under that occupation code. So if you're calling yourself a CEO, the salary is going to be a lot higher. So, sometimes we have to be quite cautious depending on how much capital the business has to pay the salary for a year, because we'd still need to demonstrate at the outset that the business can afford to support a salary of £40,000. So, there is that. But there's a few other things to consider, because essentially you can't be a sponsor of you can't be a sponsor. So you can't be an authorizing officer, which is a senior level post that you have to have associated with your license. It's key personnel. That you can be the authorizing officer as an overseas migrant, but you can't be a level 1 user, because the level 1 user has to be a settled worker in the UK. So that's where it becomes difficult for an overseas entrepreneur that wants to move to the UK but doesn't have any connections here.
Got it.
We do have solutions to that, but that can be quite difficult. And then it all falls on being able to demonstrate to the Home Office that it's genuine. It's a genuine business. And that's why it's easier to demonstrate that the person's got the right skills and experience if they've already got an overseas business like yourself. It could have been an option for you back then.
Right.
But you need to have the level 1 user in place. It couldn't be a legal representative. We can be an additional level 1 user, but it has to be somebody that's present and settled. If it's not an employee, they'd have to be a director of the business. And so they probably need to have shares in the business, because otherwise it's going to look disingenuous. Disingenuous, because the Home Office would want to ask, well, if this person isn't on the payroll, what's in it for them? If they're director of the business, and make sure that person's got the skills, qualifications to be able to, be a director of that business as well.
So, I mean, technically speaking of, the not the easiest, but perhaps the most straightforward route is still the Innovator Founder Visa.
Yeah.
But then, I don't know if you know the stats on the top of your head, but I'm guessing so many people apply and only these many people get accepted, perhaps. And on top of that, because I went through this process as well, then you're monitored, every couple of years. The business has to be doing X, Y, Z in revenue, how many people you've hired and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there has to be a legitimate business, and it has to be a successful business. If not, then obviously again, so there's a high risk in terms of people coming in. If you have somehow succeeded in coming in, but then, oh my God, like it has to continue to succeed over a number of years.
Yeah.
And as we know, startups, I mean, majority of them fail in the first 3 years and 5 years and so on. So I think there's a risk element, but it's also interesting. Also, I mean, although there's a lot of risk element, a lot of people, and again, coming back to how we were talking about how beautiful the city is in London and how much you and I love London, although people know all these risks, a lot of people are still aspire to come to London and start businesses.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to understand with you, and I don't again know if you have an answer, but I mean, it's so difficult. People want to come. This is the cleanest, not easiest, but it's the cleanest route, innovative founder visa. But now there's just so much. It's so difficult to get that visa. So much red tape. And then you're talking about this other route as well. And I'm just thinking, whilst you were talking, I was like, oh my God, like this is a lot.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give someone who is now sitting in Italy, Dubai, India, wherever, thinking to start a business? Like what should they do? Like, what's the first step besides the business side of things, but the immigration, because obviously they have to legally come to the country.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is there anything they can do, or?
I mean, do you know, it's crazy because the number of people that I've spoken to, even people that aren't overseas, people that are in the UK, like graduates. I spoke to a lady, like she's a graduate in the UK. She studied here. She did an economics degree. She wants to start a business, but she's not, she's not well formed enough. I guess the business isn't well formed enough to think about a business plan or anything like that. She's come to me and said, but despite all of that, she started it.
Amazing.
You can start a business as a graduate. She started a nail bar, and which is quite inspirational as well, because she doesn't have any experience. She's only like early 30s. She started a nail bar, but her visa expires in 2 months.
Oh, wow.
I've literally just spoken to her, and she's gone to great lengths. She's even got a lease on the shop. And her visa's due to expire in 2 months. So some people just go ahead, start a business. Because even with the Innovator Founder Visa, people talk to me and say, I've got a business in the UK. I live in Pakistan or wherever they're coming in from. But I've got a business in the UK. But you can't apply for an Innovator Founder Visa if you've already established the business. Like, it has to be,
Good point.
Good point, right?
Yeah.
Which is why then we end up speaking to a lot of people about self-sponsorship. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say that because it isn't technically a visa, but the route to sponsor yourself. But, because they've already established the business here. So my advice would be, like, get legal, come to Synergy Immigration.
There has to be a plug. There has to be a plug.
It had to be a plug. But, get legal advice before you even think about moving, because, it might impact then your visa, particularly if you're like plowing money, you've got capital invested in the UK business, it's trading already and it's established. It's fine for it to be trading and established for the to get a sponsorship license. But you can't do that if you're an innovator founder, or if you want to apply for that visa. And the purpose is that you get the visa and then you can start your UK business. People just tend to, they're probably pretty impulsive, right? Like me, and just rush into it and think, I'll figure that out later. I'll figure out the visa situation a bit later. And then it comes back to bite them. This is the problem.
I think that's also a really good point. And correct me if I'm wrong. So, doing your homework for sure, especially when it comes to visa, more than anything else. Of course, you need to do your homework when you want to start a new business, but really, I would also highly advise people moving to the country, first do your homework from the visa, because if you don't have that, you technically have nothing.
Yeah.
That's really important. Also to understand here, and again, Laura, like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, if I were to come on an innovative founder visa, and whatever happened and this business did not succeed, in parallel, I had like a already established business like the lady you spoke about. And then if I'm moving my visa to a self-sponsorship, does that mean that I kind of restart? So for example, my ILR, I need to wait for 5 years and so on. Do I then restart everything? So
you
let's say
can amalgamate your time.
I can amalgamate.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know, because I thought if you change the visa type, you also then restart the whole length of your 5 years.
It depends on the visa category. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. because a lot of people, we get a lot of instances as well where you get a skilled worker migrant who's got a PBS dependent, their partner, who comes in as a dependent, who then starts up a UK business and then ends up like if the skilled worker migrant ends up losing their job for whatever reason, the
Right.
PBS dependent then wants to become the skilled worker. But unfortunately, if they've been here for 4 years and then they become the skilled worker, their 5-year countdown starts again.
Wow.
So there's not always the option to amalgamate
Amalgamate.
time. So it does, then, yeah, people then would say, no, 4 years is too long to lose, they look for a job, or
Yeah.
the skilled worker migrant look for another job or whatever else, There's so much to think about.
In these 5 years, Laura, so you started 5 years ago, it was COVID. COVID was a different time versus today. I think the world has dramatically changed. I think the world collectively went through something, and it's also strange to think that we came out of COVID and we talk about the post-COVID era. It's also strange and interesting that we all collectively, as a race, live through that time. But what different are you seeing in terms of people coming in, going out? Has the whole immigration landscape changed? Just overall, not just from a business perspective, but just in general. Do you see a lot more influx these days? And the reason I ask you that question, again, it's just from my reality. I see a lot of, especially these days, I mean, I don't know if you've come across these posts on LinkedIn and social media. There's a lot of talk of people leaving the UK, especially people, business people. A lot of them are leaving the UK. I don't know if it's taxation. There's just so many different aspects. Do you see any change in the last couple of years, let's say from the time you started till today?
Not really. Not really. I guess because we're a growing business. So actually we're dealing with more cases today than we were
Okay.
dealing with 5 years ago. But we have had to make significant changes with the way that we do business, because there was last year, April 2024, there was an immigration change to raise the salary level, as I mentioned earlier, for skilled worker migrants. So a lot of the business owners that we were working with just couldn't afford to pay the salaries. So we ended up with a 65% downturn in business.
65. Wow.
65.
Wow.
So, and at that point, I just recruited 3 people,
Oh my God.
and then the rules changed, and then the shit hit the fan.
Wow.
It was a really difficult year last year.
I can
Really,
imagine.
very, very difficult year. And not just for me, but for a lot of our clients. Because at the time we were dealing with small businesses, a lot of one-man bands. And we've got a lot of IT businesses, clients, IT business clients, who were finding it difficult to get projects. And then that was affecting, a lot of migrant workers were being let go and were contacting us to say, I've been let go. We haven't got a project. What can I do? So we were looking at options. A lot of people were leaving because, they couldn't find the job. A lot of sponsors were, saying, I really want to recruit this migrant, but I can't afford to pay close to 40 grand. So it was a really, really difficult time for us. So we've had to kind of make changes to our target audience, really. So we now started to work with kind of medium to larger size businesses where money isn't an issue. They can afford to pay higher salaries. So there's a lot of repeat businesses. A lot of repeat business. So that's, we're seeing that. And a lot of more highly skilled, we used to work with a lot of shop owners, so store managers, it could be more kind of intermediate level jobs, customer service manager, customer service executive. So
Got
we
it.
did a lot of those.
Got it. A lot of blue collar.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly right. A lot of blue collar roles. And the Home Office are really kind of clamping down on that now, and even just raising the salary has eliminated that. So there's been a change in the level of skill that people now are bringing migrant workers into, to higher skilled roles, shall we say. And, the Home Office are questioning more intermediate level roles. So if you want to recruit a customer service manager, they want to see the job description, they want to see the migrant worker.
Right.
They'll probably interview the migrant worker before they've even got the visa, just to assess whether the person meets the criteria of the role and has the skills. Well, they're checking for genuineness.
Right, of course. Of course.
And that we're seeing a lot more of that.
Of course.
These days, there's a lot more of that, particularly if there's a family involved.
Right.
Because they automatically think, okay, it's a family. They're just, created a business just to bring their family over from overseas or whatever.
Got it.
So yeah, that's how we're seeing things being, like, the process is a lot longer because they're asking for supporting documents at every turn, and so that makes our job more difficult. And the hike in fees, you could. If you want to sponsor a migrant and you've already identified a migrant, you're going to pay about 8K in government fees, because it's a 3-stage process.
Right.
So they better be worth it.
Yeah. But I think it's also interesting because, like I said, social media, there's a lot of hoo-ha around, oh yeah, things are not good and let's just leave. But I don't think that's ever the answer. And the grass is always green on the other side. I mean, my reality has completely changed. My life has completely changed. My family's life has completely changed. So I'm going to keep on being the biggest advocate of London and the UK. But it's also interesting to hear from you that how your business is also growing.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's more challenging now. But I think that is, I think that's the case in any economy. If you look at how, for example, the UK was 10 years, 20 years before, but this every other economy, if as you progress things, the filtration process gets that much more tightened and tightened. But I think that's also good for the economy, technically speaking, because now you're looking at quality over quantity. You're bringing the right people in, better skill sets, which then obviously positively impacts the economy.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at a bigger picture, like the grand scale of things.
I totally agree.
Yeah,
absolutely, I totally agree. It's working.
Yeah.
The changes that they've made to cap, immigrants coming over to the UK, it is working. And, we are seeing, we're seeing better quality candidates because we're dealing with bigger businesses. We deal with a lot. We deal with a lot of different type of industries, different sectors, but a lot of IT, because we do always struggle to find IT. AI now, such a huge thing, isn't it? But yeah, a lot of IT, we work with a lot of businesses that specialize in IT. So there's always going to be a need for skilled workers with that skill set,
I know you jokingly, but also behind every joke, there's always a little bit of truth. Jokingly plugged synergy, but once again, it's just it's such a difficult space to navigate if you don't have the right partner. So if it's synergy or any other, I would highly recommend for anyone moving into the space really to get somebody who's an expert, who understands the system, who is able to guide you in the right direction, because it's just so complex. And the problem is, I think more than anything else, things keep changing every single time, like you said at the beginning of the pod as well. So that for sure, and hopefully synergy can help. But what's the next? The business you've pivoted slightly from your ICP,
Yeah.
So different types of customers. What's the next? Like, what's the aspiration? What's the next 3 years for synergy looking like?
Oh, that's a good question. As I was saying, we had a very difficult year last year, and I grew the business too quickly. Absolutely. I made some big mistakes. I think I'm learning from those mistakes. That's my impulsiveness.
Yeah.
Always gets me. But I ended up leaving, having to let go of 4 staff, unfortunately. Even at the start of this year, had to make a very difficult decision to make 2 members of the team redundant. So the next year for sure will be just to stabilize, you know, and but we've got a fantastic team. You know, we're lean, but we're a well-oiled machine. So it's just, you know, we've got the foundations, and so yeah, just onwards and upwards really over the next few years.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that. Any final advice for people, again, just in general, thinking about the UK? Because when I was navigating my move, I looked at America. So I actually went to New York, and then I landed in London. I'm like, oh my God, this is it. Like it just felt home. But everybody's different. So any final advice for people trying to find that second home or the new home they're trying to find outside, and to build a new life? Like any advice when they're looking at different options around the globe as well?
Nice question. I mean, I'm often asked this question. If I moved to the UK, where would I move to? Yeah, it all depends on the person as well, because they need to, if it's a family, you need to think about schools. Aside from what you're going to do here for a living, there's so many things that you need to think about, right? But just sometimes I think we think too much.
That's also
No?
true. Sometimes, most times.
Most times, right? Because then you never do it. As I keep saying, I'm so
Paralysis
impulsive.
by analysis.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. But if it feels right, it is right. And before you're looking to move here, like, come spend some quality time in the UK, explore, have fun doing it. And because you'll find, you ended up in Fulham, I ended up in Crystal Palace. You'll find a little pocket of maybe London, or if you want to be, you need to love where you live. I'm passionate about London. I love where I live. I love Crystal Palace, but you need to find what's really important to you, I guess, as a person, right? The important things to me is have a bit of green space. There's a huge park. I like my yoga studio. I like the gym. I like being part of a community. So Crystal Palace works really well for me. But for London, like the opportunity, there's opportunities. There's great opportunities there. And if you just come to the UK, spend some time here, and you fall in love with it, like you did, like I do every day. I discover something new about London, then, and then plan from there. Don't start a business
No.
in your home country and then come to us with the issue that actually, I didn't think about this. We can't move here because we need a visa. Yeah. Yeah. So my advice would be just come, do a bit of research first, and then, take it from there.
This might as well have been like a big advert for London and the UK, by the way.
Yeah.
Just this episode.
Yeah.
I think it's just amazing because obviously you're so passionate about the UK and London. I'm super passionate as well. If the mayor of London is listening, please sponsor this pod. But thank you so much, Laura. This was absolutely amazing, and I think a lot of people don't, or maybe underestimate the challenges when it comes to setting up their lives, not just business, in a new country. And once again, getting the right support, getting the right help from the get-go, I think is super important. But also just I think that awareness is super important. And you're doing a great job. Your team is doing a great job. All the best with your new venture as well. I think it's super interesting. It's going to help a lot more people and giving them just a different angle or a different option.
Yeah.
And hopefully that is not in the long future, but somehow in the near future. And all the best, Laura. Thank you so much for coming on the pod.
Thank you.